But then we learn to be ashamed of that. And then we can learn to mistake objectification for relationship. But relationship, of course, include and transcend, includes objectification. And so what we want to do in relationships, we want to normalize objectification. Because women, you really hate it, right? When a guy objectifies you when you don't want to be objectified, right? Doesn't that suck? But how about if you are being the embodiment of the goddess and you're really hot, he's objectifying you. How does that feel? Different. Yes, he's yes.
The question you asked about.
We're distracted by erotic polarity. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not completely sensitive. We have incredible sensitivities to other people. And so if we can pay attention to those other sense organs, 70% of all communication is nonverbal, and not distracted by the erotic polarity, then the erotic polarity then becomes another channel of connection. And I noticed as I got older that I was more discerning. The women that were objectively erotically radiant were attractive to me if there were other channels that weren't happening, if there wasn't kindness, for instance. And women have said the same thing to me as they've matured. One more comment, yes. Romantic infatuation. It's miserable with intimate bonding, and it's twice as miserable with intimate bonding with a couple little kids in the house, which is where I wrote The Attuned Family, How to Be a Great Lover to Your Spouse and a Great Parent to Your Kids. At that point, women need to grow so that they can learn, and men need to grow so that they can learn, that at least with feminine eroticism, arousal leads to desire. And the guy needs to navigate. And to navigate, he needs his partner helping him navigate. She has a responsibility to navigate her in the pleasure, and he has a responsibility to learn how to do that. And men are good with responsibilities. We were just hearing this. So what we need to do is to up-level the sense of responsibility that people have in a relationship. And the responsibility is to light each other up. And we need to do it erotically, we need to do it emotionally, we need to do it in every way. And that's part of what Integral and what this map that Martin brilliantly displays in his book. It helps us understand the points where that's working and where that's not working.
Perspective, and at the time I had this Power of Now group at the Center for Spiritual Living in Santa Rosa, and all the talk was about unconditional love. So I always thought, right, if you meet somebody where these right-hand quadrants things are resonant, in the left hand, that's all can be fixed by unconditional love. And through Ken Wilber's model, of course, I realized that there is also structures on the left side, the interiority.
And often, just being connected, transparent, and accepting, something changes, something profound changes. It especially changes if we're looking into each other's eyes. We have motor neurons in our brain, mirror neurons, that recapitulate each other's states of consciousness, including our intentionality, when we look in each other's eyes. It's one of the reasons, besides laziness, that I don't use PowerPoints when I do presentations. Because I want people to be looking in my eyes. I want them to feel what I'm feeling. And we do that with people. And there's a tremendous amount of information that's transmitted that way. And later on, if we have time, I'm going to talk about how I encourage single people to use that capacity to evaluate other people, potential partners. Please forgive me. Thank you, oh God, thank you.
So, of course, in my book I go in great detail, but what I say pisses me off often when I hear relationship conversations is very often there is no differentiation between biological sex, which of course in Integral would be the upper right, learned gender roles, which can be transcended, and then they're interconnected and also fluid, right? In our workshop we do an exercise where we discuss this in same-sex groups, and usually often the group says, let's do that a whole weekend, just unpack what is biological sex and gender. Then there is also the aspect of the anima animus, which I kind of added to the Integral model, which is repressed female qualities and repressed male qualities. So that has also to do with gender. And then we have feminine and masculine polarities, which each gender, potentially at least, can embody equally. And that's a potential It's not a repressed thing. This is a potential that can emerge, and it's probably for most of us or all of us a lifelong practice to become healthy in our ascending, healthy in our descending, healthy in agency, and healthy in communion, which are the masculine polarities and the feminine polarities. How Ken kind of like defines that. Is there any question about that? Something that's not clear? So I'm just putting that out there as an information and something for you to think about. Also, to know that we at any given time can only occupy one address in this feminine masculine polarity grid, or what do we call it, cross, and that as David Data and others teach us that sexual attraction and also synergy emerges when there is a polarity there, a distance. And in Erich Fromm, in his book The Art of Love, he decried basically that women became way too masculine in the time when he wrote that book. Does anybody know when that book was written?
60s.
In 1957, the year when I was born. Yeah. Emphasize again that we understand that from a second-tier perspective, we see that there is healthy capacities that get included and limited views that get transcended in that growth. So in relationships, that's very important. That I think will be an ongoing practice for second-tier couples to look really what limited views have not been transcended yet and show up in some kind of shadow or pathological way, and which basic capacities have not been included yet. Does that make sense? And then I'm just briefly going to cover 3 different state stages. One is the spiritual state stages that Alan Combs in the Global Combs lattice unpacked a little bit more for us. So most of you are probably aware with the gross, subtle, causal, pure witness, and non-dual state stages. And then there is also 5 sexual state stages that go from repressed sexuality to fucking, where Ken says everything goes as long as your partner doesn't call the police. So we give him credit for that. Then the having sex stage is where there is some kind of consensus and mutuality, and also often conversation about birth control and sexual transmitted diseases and so on and so forth. But the sexuality is at the lowest common denominator in that case. And then lovemaking is where your sexuality becomes an authentic expression of your loving relationship, and you're also open to grow and to heal, David Schnark, passive marriage, and so on and so forth, to expand on your sexuality. And then we have the transcendent sex and tantra and so on and so forth. And then last but not least is the animus complex in females. There's a great book called Female Authority where I have that from if anybody's interested, called Female Authority. Great book by Polly Young Eisentraut. And she postulates that there is 5 stages, and they're not hierarchical in the sense that every adult woman goes through these 5 stages, but has to do what her relationship was with her primary caregiver or father, and then a certain complex has the potential to develop, and then as a young woman, she can then work from whatever stage she is towards the highest. And that's basically seeing males as alien outsiders, or seeing males as Father, God, King, that she wants to be praised by, right? They're always seeking the approval by the man. A woman in stage 3 wants the typical husband, provider, protector. In stage 4, this is often very confusing for men when women want to find out who they are, independent of patriarchy and dependence on a man, right? I need to find out who I am by myself. I often hear that when couples break up, the man rushes right into the next relationship if he has access, and the woman says, well, I need to be single for a few years to find out who I really am. And men often don't understand that is really a developmental necessity. And then the 5th stage is where she can see male as an equal partner. And on the male side, it looks a little different, where if he had a distorted relationship with his mother and never separates, he sees every woman as a mother, and women call these guys mama boys. And then in the 2nd stage, they see every woman as a sex object. In the 3rd, as a supportive partner. In the 4th stage, that's a little tricky because often men grow in this 4th stage when they they realize that they cannot have women as the only center of their meaning in life and a source of love and so on and so forth, and they go on a spiritual path or in a man's group and really bond with men and you know, just find a life purpose independent of reflection from women. And then in the fifth stage, they can see females also as an equal partner, just as here. So if we put this all together, what I just showed you briefly, it looks somewhat like that. You have a question? Part of me was obviously to understand what the Wilbur-Combs lattice meant. So here we have the vertical 8 stages, and then here we have the 5 stages of spiritual development. And then when I thought about sexual development, for a while I thought, well, all egocentric people, they all fuck, and they all have sex, and they all make love, and the green people, they go into the tantra class on Thursday evening. But then I realized, well, I met actually some women that were egocentric but highly sexually developed, and maybe other women were highly developed in their consciousness development but sexually relatively constipated. So I arranged the sexual development also in this kind of vertical stage way, and also the anima animus complex. Again, you get the idea. This is independent, largely independent from your vertical development. And who was the woman who showed that graph with spiritual development? Cynthia Wigglesworth, I think, which kind of confirmed that in a way. I think that today. And then here in the middle we have the feminine masculine, and this is just sort of like a general pointer that we start out relatively undifferentiated down here, and then females typically swing to their feminine side in the conventional stages of development, and this is where this term feminine comes from. It means behaving womanly, right? So it was coined in that era, and the men are masculine, and then, as I already said, in the orange stage, many women swing over to the masculine side, and you have this no more polarity that David Ada wrote extensively about. And then in the green stage, we very often have the men swing over to their feminine side, and where I live, they call them snacks, the sensitive new age guys. Or I call them the Mariana smoking guitar playing massage therapists who don't have a job and want to talk about their feelings all day. So, sorry for my cynicism.
Sorry if there's anybody that's marijuana smoking
and I was
in the room.
Yeah, I was a snack for a while. I'm a confessing snack. I just never gave up my job because I have 4 children, so that saved me. So it was really an important stage in my life, but also very painful. You know, a lot of men experience pain here, and I just throw that in since we're here. What often happens here is a pre-trans fallacy in relationships that I talked about.